G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now we're continuing on with the Sunderland build and nothing's changed. Actually, a lot has changed since the last video, but it's all very subtle. It's a little bit of camo change here and a lot of metal barrels and things there. Look at these photos. Yeah, we have got brass everywhere. We've got brass coming out of our turrets. Alright, so if that sounds interesting to you, hang in there. More to come. Let's roll the music. Now things are progressing nicely with the Sunderland. In the last video I've got the grey on and all the little camo pattern edges. There's not much to it. It's only two colours, white and grey. Everyone kept looking at the grey and going, where's the green? Where's the green in that? I can't see it. That's a two-colour camo. Well, I'm counting the white as camo because most of this craft from underneath and from the sides is white, so it's hidden in the sea and the spray and the ice and the polar bear farts. You know, that's a camo colour. It's white. Anyhow, enough of that. What I want to do now is the machine guns on this model. Plastic ones aren't bad from Airfix, and you'd get away with them, you know. At a pinch you would, but I can do better. I can do better. And what I have done is I've purchased. You can't exactly get a set of metal machine guns for the Sunderland that I could find, but it's a very common barrel for most of the other British aircraft from that period, right? The RAAF. So the Defiant has the Browning .303, and that's what we're going to use. So the Defiant set comes with 4 of those, which is terrific, which I can use for the back gun, because the back gun is where is it? It's here somewhere. The back gun has 2 slots. Each one of them has 2 barrels, so that can have that set, and they're just little single piece. Now at the front there's a single, if you've been watching my other videos you already know all this, there's a single barrel on there, although some of the later ones did have 2 barrels, but mine's going to have a single, and I debated whether to go 2, but I thought by the time I start cutting this and racking this, yeah, and I looked at the vac form and thought, no, too much trouble, can't be bothered. And as I showed you before, the central one, that goes on the dorsal fin, or the dorsal part of the plane. Does it have a fin? It's not a bloody shark. The dorsal turret has got 2 barrels. Okay, so what I've got there, I have got these sets. Now, these are generic Browning M2.5s, okay? So I'm putting 303s at the back and I'm putting .5s at the front. So you can argue with me about that if you like, but that's what I'm doing. It's hardly going to look much different by the time it's all put together, believe you me. So my .5s, I can only get 2 at a time, and they come with both the silencer or the cooling jacket, right? And then you've actually got the tiny barrel in there. It's a bit hard to see in the packet. I'll get them out in a sec. But you only get 2, so I had to buy 2 sets to get the 3 that I needed. So I'll have one up my sleeve. So that's how I got metal barrels. And now let's see how you put them on the kit. Right, let's separate the clear part, which was going to get a good clean up and tidy up before it actually goes in the model. Here's the plastic part, okay? Now the barrel, of course, is only this front piece of plastic, okay? And that's what we can replace with brass. So let's have a look and see what we've got in this upgrade kit. Maybe you'd better see them now. See, there's 2 barrels, that's all you get. 2 shafts and 2 cooling jackets. All right. Now you get instructions as well, which is rather handy. This is master barrels. I've used their barrels before, they're always good. And so they show you 2 cooling jackets, 2 things. And instructions. Put the barrel into the cooling jacket. Oh yes. Cut off the original plastic barrel, drill a hole, and away you go. And they say a 0.7mm hole is what you're going to need. Alrighty. So we'll have to find our 0.7mm drill bit and our pin vise. There we go. Lucky it's 0.7 because my 0.8 is missing. I don't know why. I think I bought a brand new set of those. Becca must have them. Now, length is the next thing. Okay, we need to check that length. So, how long is Airfix made things? So they're looking at about 8mm. Okay, Airfix says 8mm. The supplied barrels are 11 millimeters. Okay, so we've got a couple of millimeters there to get that base part in, which is good. So that's what we need. So this is squeaky bum time. This is where you cut into your kit and there's no coming back. We change our mind. So, oh, ow, and they've pinged off. I don't even know where they are. It's a good time now to clean things up too, because I've got quite a bit of junk on there. So it might be time for me to give this a bit of a sand and clean up before we proceed. Right, I got that all nice and smooth. So there you go. That is looking very good, and the part's cleaned up. It didn't need much, but I mean, sort of the thing that you want to do now, because you don't want to put the metal parts on and then have to be sanding and flicking around with, you know, knives and things cleaning up, because you'll snap your barrels off. Okay. So what we want to do is we need that 0.7 millimeter hole, and we need it right in the middle of there. So this is where you want to make a little pilot starty hole thing. Okay, and have a look. Is that in the center? I think it is. Okay, so that hole is right, and we can check. Does it look centered? Yep. If it's slightly off, you can sort of angle in as you go, and if I be true, it's right. So get it started one way, check it the other way, keep checking, because you're only working in fractions of millimeters here. Your glue's going to help, but okay. And now pull out with the thumb, and that'll tell you how much you've done. So I've done about 2 millimeters. All right. So now let's get our barrels out. You don't want to push too hard or squeeze, because these are so fragile. So they are fiddly is an understatement, and it should poke out at that end. So that is correct. Now, will that fit in our little hole? And yes, it does. So there you go. That's going to look a lot better. Let me make up the rest of them, and we'll see how they look once they're in the turrets. Alright, now for the moment of truth. I have put the tiniest bit of CA glue between the jacket and the shaft, so that stops them falling off, because they're quite fiddly. But we can now just dip in the super glue, and yes, I have got it in a candle, and there's a reason for that. It keeps the super glue basically fluid for longer. So now we'll just get that in there, make sure it's straight that way, make sure it's straight that way. Not too bad. As long as they both line up, you can get away with a modicum of wonkiness, because they look fine. So line up that way. Line up that way. Are they both in the same distance? That's the thing. Although sometimes barrels are offset, won't they? Alright, they're lined up, they're dry, they are ready to go, so they go in there. A bit of a sort of dicky setup with these, because they sit there on the plastic. And there we go. I think you'd have to agree that looks 100% better. Don't they look really nice? Yeah. All right, let's get on, and I'll replace all the rest of them. Now these double barrel ones, they're a lot easier. You don't have to push the jacket over, right? So basically you just drill the holes and poke them in. They required a 0.6mm drill bit, so that was okay. I've got one of those. And again, we've got to cut and sacrifice the ends off here. So similar, we just basically note where those are, cut them off, put them together. Now you notice mine's actually got a bit of stock tube there, because this part, pulling it off and on again with my dry fits, snapped. So I actually had to rebuild it, because it's a silly thing. It actually integrates in with the gunner, which is kind of how Airfix does it. So I found a bit of tube and I custom fixed it. Not a problem. All right, I'll get this one done, and then I'll put together the whole 4-barrel turret. We'll see what it looks like. And as with all this stuff, it's always a good idea to dry fit. Make sure that you do get your angles right, everything looks right. And in this case, because it's got to match up to the other set, see if they all end up the same length. So, leveling them up, I think I've done a pretty good job of that. They look pretty spot on. Alright, I can glue those in now. Now you've got to be careful, one end is fluted, see? That's where the bullets are going to come out. And the other end is straight. So as long as you're using the right end in the hole, you should be pretty right. The old barrels are gone. New barrels are in. Now this is a sort of a dicky arrangement where that slides through there, and then this part has to fit on here. And you need to do all of this without bumping the plastic. So you need to get those all lined up, and I think they are. And I think they're looking pretty mighty. So there we go. So then this will go over here, and we'll have a very smart looking gun. Now there was quite a bit of discussion after the last video about my parabolas, right? And the thing is, the reason that I did it that way is as per this aftermarket decal instruction, which is for the Australian version, JTN, which is the one that I wanted to do, right? And it had parabolas. But it's also got de-icing strips, which weren't necessary if it was round Papua New Guinea, which a lot of the ones that Australia used were. They weren't up in the North Sea. And the cowlings weren't always fully copper. Often they were painted over. So the thing is, what is true? Now, I've looked at lots and lots and lots of photos, and when you look side on and at the bleak angles, this kind of does look like a parabola. But further investigation showed it is as per, right? They're the ones out of Ireland. That's how they're painted. Yes, there is actually supposed to be a full strip, and it kind of curves around. So I ummed and erred. I even tried hand painting to see if I can modify this. No. So I'm going to strip this down, just this front bit here, and I'm going to repaint those edges so that all those poor souls out there that got so upset, they can sleep at night. So how can I accomplish this without having to respray the whole wing? Well, I've got a cunning plan, and it involves a little bit of tricky masking. Now, we could just sort of cover that up and away we go, but we're going to end up with a little straight edge there on the grey. Wouldn't it be nice if somehow we could follow panel lines? Well, there's a lovely sort of edge here where the curve of the nacelle, right, it goes down to there. So is there a way we could do that? Well, we can use the same trick that I used before to actually paint the parabolas, but in reverse, okay? So in reverse, we do this. Holding that in place there, right, that's got to basically cover that up. Allow a bit more, right? Run my nail in, and look, I can find the line. All right, so there it is, and now that I've got a nice sharp little edge, put my pencil in. Okay, we have the shape. There's method to my madness. Stay with me. Stay with me. So again, on this one, right, keep it straight, Harry, keep it straight. Same thing. Hoping the whole thing hasn't slipped and gone to buggery. And there again, is my curve. All right. Okay. Now, that's easy enough, you say? Sure, Harry. That's all very well. How of what use is it going to be? Well, let me elucidate you. These are lovely words, aren't they? Okay, so there we go. There's the curve. Now, it doesn't have to be absolutely micromillimeter perfect. That's the shape roughly, okay? Because we might do, it's going to be like a little feathered overspray edge. And it'll make sense in a sec. Now, what I need is, I need to be able to tape that to the wing. But, of course, I've put that right up hard to that edge, okay? So that's the line right up hard on the edge. So what we actually need is we need to lose half the width of my tape. My tape's 20 millimeters, roughly. I've got 10 millimeter marks on my cutting board. All I need to do is remove the bits I don't need. Now I'm keeping this, and it'll make sense in a sec. I've got an escaping little cowling there, is running away. Run away, run away. Let me be free. I want to go to the cowling heaven. Okay. So, have I done this right? Yes. Okay, so now I have that. Stay with me, stay with me. This is tricks in masking. Now I've got my tape. Okay, now lining that hard up against there. And lining my tape hard up against the white line. And again, we have got a little bit of wriggle room with this. I'd say about 0.5 millimeter, because we're not doing an exact masking line. It is an edge that we're going to allow a little bit of overspray into, and therefore it's not going to wreck the rest of our paint job. Okay, so now we've got that. But again, Harry, that hasn't solved the problem. We've still got to get rid of that. Yes, I know. So now, watch. This is magic. See? For those of you that doubted me. And you might have to rewind and watch that again to see the magnificence of my logic. Now, the proof is, will this fit on here? So let's do the middle one. All we've got to do is match that to there. That to there. And this to here. Now remember, the paper was folded when it went over last time, so you've got to allow for that. So there we go. And this one will fit exactly there. Now I'm not going to repaint these lines. This is just to stop overspray from going crazy on the model. Well, I've left everything overnight to dry after getting a nice coat of white Sonorez on. And white is the worst Sonorez colour, but it is white. When you need white, you need white. Now, this is a brand new bottle that I managed to secure. It was about the last one, I think, in Australia. Couldn't find another bottle because my white had run out and it was getting very glaggy towards the end. And changing to this was so thin by comparison, it was an effort. It was a lot of work to get a primer coat. That's all I can say. I don't know. Then I topped it off with some life colour white, which is exactly what I'd done with the rest of the aircraft. So after all that, we're literally back to where I was some time ago, in that all I've really got is this whole edge painted. Okay. Now, how did I go with the masking? That's the thing. Did it bleed like crazy, or... Oh, it's not too bad. Not too bad, we can live with that. A little bit there, that'll probably just sand out. That we can, that'll just disappear. Because remember, I've still got the grey to put on. So that's the thing. That's the beauty of at least the way that I've done this. There's a couple of other ways you could have gone about the order of doing this. But because I needed to get this all white again, I thought this would be the best way to go. And always go with the lighter colour than your darker colour. So now I can mask up the white and paint the grey. But how do we get that curvy shape? So that's the thing. But one thing I worked out from the photos is when you add the cowling, okay, when you put the cowling on, that spot there, which is basically the exhaust, right? The whole exhaust pipe, mufflery type thing, that is the edge of where the camo basically starts to curve around. So when you measure that up, and I've done this exercise, it is 4mm from this little notch, and the notch, which is one that's hidden, is in the center. So using that notch as your guide, I can go 4mm either side, 4mm either side. That gives me an 8mm wide sort of landing strip here to work off. Then I've got to do the curve. All right, how are we going to do that? I've measured and now I've marked in my 2 points. And don't worry, that won't be seen because the cowling goes over the top of that. So that just basically gives me a guide point. So now I can put some tape down. So I know, looking at the photos, and boy have I looked at a lot of photos to basically figure this whole thing out. I know, looking at the photos, that it goes straight for 1/3 of the distance back to the wing, and I need to make sure that I am parallel. There we go, 4mm in parallel. Okay, I'll easily work that out. I'm not sure that I'm parallel or not. The joining point here and that point there, that tip, if I line those up, okay, and then I can check against my tape. Yep, I'm parallel. Now, again, I'm going to use the trick of marking the tape with my fingernail, which gives me that groove, because the all-important point I need here is there. Okay, so that line there is very important to give me this junction. That's where the curve comes in. Now the top here, as I said, it's about, as far as I can tell from the edge of the wing, about 1/3. So that's what it looks like in all the photos. So we're looking at 15 there. So that's going to be 5mm long. So 1/3 in, 1/3 along, 3/3 you're to there. So our curve, it's not a complete, some people do a circle come straight up in their models, and it's all very well, but it's not how it actually is when you have a look at the photos. So it is a parabola from there to there. And again, how are we going to do this, Harry? How are we going to do our parabola? We're going to use our parabola trick. Saw the last video. This is a way to do a parabola. Is you simply pull the tape up and the tape will naturally form a curve. Okay, so you pull the tape to what you want and it will naturally form a curve. Okay, it's not as easy on this one, admittedly, but again, it'll form that curve, and I've pretty well got it right. So from there, curves into there. Okay, so side on, you only get that very shallow line, and some people have mistaken that as a parabola that way. It looks so much like it. I've looked at the photos, gone, it really does look like you've got this whole sort of, teardrop sort of nail type shape there, a parabola that way. And maybe it was, but it's hard to tell. But then you look at the factory fresh photos and some of the ones where you can look down and it's always curved this way. So alright, that is our curve. Now, what I'm going to do is, I want my curve to be consistent across all 4 engines, right? I don't want it to look sort of messed up, some a bit short, some a bit long. I'm going to make a template out of this. Now I've got some leftover scratch building plastic here. It's about 0.5mm. It's not too thick, so it's easy to cut, but it'll be stiff enough to create a nice template. So that's the shape that I need to get. So if I put my tape on here, I'll be able to use that and create, I'm literally creating what's called a French curve. Is that once I've got this curve and I'm happy with it, I can use it to mark all my other tapes and they'll all be identical. I can turn it upside down to get the reverse curve. So let me start doing that. So this shape should be consistent for everything. So here, that goes like that. I think it's got to have a bit of a curve on it. You've got to find, like, I've got to match it to there and to there. There's my 2 points. So matching it to that one, matching that up against there. Every time, that's how it's going to go. And this is what I need to do. I'll mark that out on the tape. I'll be able to tape all of these up. Masking went on well. I've very carefully sprayed these, very light coats, exactly at right angles to the tape, so I hope there's no bleed. Have a look at it. Oh, that's looking good. Looking good, and that's the thing. If you don't flood it, you're very gentle with your first few coats, then it creates a seal where the tape meets. Look at that. Perfect. Had a win for a change. I've had a few setbacks in this kit, but nothing major. Just little things. Look at that. That's fine. And if we pop on the cowlings, I'm not the king of dry fits around here. That is a winner. And that's all we got time for this time. Yes, I know. All we did was put a few little brass barrels in, muck around with some painting and masking. But look, there's lots more to come, and I hope there were some hints and tricks there that I shared in this video that were useful to you. So if you like this thing, do all the buttons, hit all those things, like it. The algorithm loves it, eats it up. And by all means, if you really want to help me out, bang, buy me a curry. Really appreciate it. Helps feed Basque. But that's it for now. Lots more to come next time. I'll see you then. It's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Denny.